I need to tell you about a night that changed the world. A night when a lone man, sitting in an office in Berlin, looking at an equation that didn't make sense, made a desperate decision. A decision that he himself thought was temporary. A mathematical trick. A trick to make the numbers match. Something he intended to fix later when he found the real solution. But the hack worked. And it didn't just work. It worked so well that it opened a door to a reality that no one imagined existed. A reality where the rules that govern the universe are completely different than anyone thought. A reality that is behind every atom in your body, every photon of light that enters your eyes, every particle of matter that makes up everything that exists. And the man who opened that door, the man who unwittingly started the greatest scientific revolution of the 20th century, was someone who believed in God, deeply, publicly. Until the last day of a life that was marked by tragedy, loss, and suffering that would destroy the faith of any ordinary person. His name is Max Planck. And if you've ever heard someone say that serious scientists don't believe in God, Planck's existence should end that conversation before it begins. But I don't just want to tell you that Planck believed in God. That would be too easy. It would be a historical curiosity. An interesting fact to mention in a circle of friends. I want to show you why he believed. What his science revealed about the nature of reality that led him to conclude that there is a mind behind everything, and why that conclusion is as relevant today as it was when he uttered it nearly a century ago. So let's start at the beginning. For the night that changed everything. It was October 1900. Planck was 42 years old. He was a professor of theoretical physics at the University of Berlin. A methodical, conservative man, averse to revolutions. The kind of scientist who believed in the solid foundations of classical physics and didn't want to tear anything down. I wanted to build on what already existed. I wanted to solve problems within the system. I didn't want to create a new system. But nature did not cooperate. There was a problem in physics that no one could solve. The problem of blackbody radiation. A blackbody is a theoretical object that absorbs all the radiation it receives and emits it back. And when physicists measured how this radiation is distributed among different frequencies, the results didn't match any existing theory. Classical physics predicted that a black body would emit infinite energy at high frequencies, the so-called ultraviolet catastrophe. But that didn't happen. Nature behaved in a way that physics could not explain. Planck tried to solve the problem within classical physics, tried for years, and it failed. Every classical approach gave the wrong result. The numbers didn't add up. The theory did not correspond to the experimental data. And Planck, with the honesty of a scientist who respects data above all else, realized that the problem was not in the calculations. It was in physics itself. Something fundamental was wrong with the way physics understood energy. And then, on that October night, Planck did something desperate. He made an assumption that went against everything classical physics taught. He assumed that energy is not continuous, that doesn't flow like water, which comes in discrete packages, in minimal, indivisible portions. How many? It was a radical assumption. It seemed absurd. Planck himself thought it was a temporary trick, a mathematical crutch he would use until he found the correct explanation, but the numbers matched. For the first time, the theory perfectly matched the experimental data. The equation that Planck derived with this assumption described the blackbody spectrum with complete accuracy. And the assumption that seemed temporary turned out to be permanent, because it wasn't a gimmick, it was a discovery. One of the greatest discoveries in the history of science. Planck had revealed that nature, at the most fundamental level, is discrete, not continuous. That energy, light, matter, everything comes in packages. How many? In indivisible portions. From this discovery, quantum physics was born. The most profound revolution science has ever experienced. A revolution that changed everything. From the way we understand matter to the way we build computers, from lasers to MRIs, from transistors to semiconductors. Virtually all of the technology that defines the modern world exists because of that night when Planck made a desperate guess in an office in Berlin. Einstein used Planck's quanta to explain the photoelectric effect in 1905 and won the Nobel Prize for it. Bohr used it to build the atomic model. Heisenberg formulated the uncertainty principle. Schrödinger wrote the equation that governs quantum behavior. Dirac united quantum and relativity. The entire quantum revolution of the 20th century has its roots in Planck's discovery. He is ground zero, the beginning of everything. And Planck received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1918. He is universally recognized as one of the greatest physicists of all time. He is in the same pantheon as Newton and Einstein. Some argue that it is above, because without Planck, Einstein would not have had the conceptual tools to do what he did. Now that you understand who Planck was and what he did, I need to tell you the part that almost no one knows. The part that modern culture hides because it's too inconvenient for the narrative that scientists don't believe in God. Max Planck believed in God, and not in a vague, shy, or embarrassed way. in a clear, articulated, public, and consistent way throughout life. Planck saw science and faith as complementary, not as enemies, not as rivals competing for the same territory. As two legitimate and necessary ways of knowing reality. Science answering the how, faith answering why, science describing the mechanisms, faith seeking meaning, the two different questions, the two different answers, and both are equally indispensable. And Planck went far beyond simply saying he believed. He explained why. And his reasons are as relevant today as they were a century ago, perhaps more relevant. Because 21st century science has revealed things that greatly strengthen Planck's arguments. Planck's first argument was about the nature of matter, and this is the argument that I find most disturbing to any honest materialist. Planck spent his life investigating matter at the most fundamental level, and what he found was not what he expected. Matter, at the quantum level, does not behave like matter in the sense we imagine. It's not solid, it's not concrete. It is not substantial in the way that everyday experience suggests. At the atomic level, matter is almost all empty space. If the nucleus of an atom were a marble in the center of a football stadium, the nearest electron would be in the back rows of the stands. And between the marble and the stands, there is nothing, empty. And at the subatomic level, it gets even weirder. Particles are not defined objects with specific position and speed. They are probability distributions. Waves of possibility that only materialize when observed. Before observation, an electron is not in any specific place. It is in all possible places simultaneously, with different probabilities for each position. Matter, deep down, is more like an idea than a thing. And Planck saw this earlier and more clearly than almost anyone. And his conclusion was expressed in one of the most extraordinary statements a scientist has ever made. He said that, as someone who dedicated his entire life to the most rigorous science, to the study of matter, he could affirm that matter as such does not exist, that all matter exists only by virtue of a force that sustains the particles, and that behind this force we must assume the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind, which is the matrix of all matter. These are words from the father of quantum physics, from the man who started the most profound revolution in modern science. And they say exactly the opposite of what materialism claims. Materialism says that matter is the foundation, that everything is matter, that the mind is a product of matter. Planck says that mind is the foundation, that matter is a product of mind, that matter does not sustain itself, needs something, of an intelligence, of a conscience, from God. And this is not the daydream of a religious scientist projecting his faith onto the data. It is the conclusion of someone who investigated the matter with more rigor and depth than practically any human being in history. And he found, deep down in matter, not raw substance, but intelligence. Planck's second argument was about the laws of nature, and this argument is so simple that it almost goes unnoticed, but so profound that no one has ever convincingly refuted it. Planck found it extraordinary that the universe followed laws, not vague or approximate laws, mathematically precise laws, laws that can be written in equations, laws that work with the same exactitude at any point in the cosmos, at any moment in time, laws that allow predictions of absurd precision, that allow you to calculate the position of a planet 1,000 years from now, that allow you to predict the behavior of subatomic particles with 10 decimal places of precision. And the question Planck asked was, where did these laws come from? Why is the universe ordered rather than chaotic? Why does it follow rules instead of being random? Why are these rules expressible in mathematical language? Why is there a correspondence between the structure of the universe and the ability of the human mind to understand it? If the universe is a product of chance, there is no reason for it to follow laws. Chance produces randomness, not order. Chance produces chaos, not mathematics. Chance does not generate elegant equations that describe the behavior of everything with perfect precision. And Planck argued that the existence of natural laws is in itself evidence of a lawgiver, that the order of the universe points to an ordering mind, that the mathematical intelligibility of the cosmos suggests an intelligence that designed it to be intelligible. Planck's third argument was about the limits of science. And this is an argument that modern culture does not want to hear, but which is absolutely valid. Planck said that science cannot solve the ultimate mystery of nature, and that this is not a failure of science. It's the nature of the situation. Because we ourselves are part of the mystery. We are part of the nature we are trying to understand. It's like an eye trying to see itself. You can see everything around, but you can't see yourself directly. Need a mirror. You need something outside of yourself. And Planck believed that religion was that mirror, not in opposition to science. In addition, science looks outward and describes what it sees. Religion looks inward and seeks meaning. Science asks how the universe works. Religion asks why the universe exists. And both questions are equally legitimate, and both responses are equally necessary. Saying that science is the only valid form of knowledge, what philosophers call scientism, is a position that Planck rejected, because scientism is itself a statement that science cannot prove. The phrase, "we should only believe what science can demonstrate," cannot be demonstrated by science. It is a philosophical statement, not a scientific one, and therefore it refutes itself. And now I need to tell you about Planck's personal life, because his faith wasn't just tested in the laboratory. It was tested by life, in ways that would make most people crumble. Planck lost his first wife, Marie, in 1909, after a long and painful illness. He lost his eldest son, Karl, during the First World War in 1916. He lost his twin daughters, Greta and Emma, tragically, one in 1917 and the other in 1919. Each of them died during childbirth, and the second son, Erwin, was executed by the Nazis in January 1945 for his involvement in the July 1944 plot against Hitler. 4 children, all lost. The wife, lost. The house in Berlin, destroyed by Allied bombing. The library, the manuscripts, the work of a life, all lost in the fire. And Planck did not lose faith, maintained, until the end. He died in October 1947 with the same conviction he carried throughout his life. The conviction that behind matter there is a mind, that the universe has purpose, that science and faith walk together towards a truth that neither alone can completely reach. And I think that Planck's persistence of faith in the face of so much loss is in itself evidence. Not a logical proof, an existential evidence. Because if faith was a crutch, if it was a comforting fantasy that people use when life is easy, it should have broken when Planck's life became unbearable. It should have collapsed when the 4th child died. It should have evaporated when the bombs destroyed everything he had. But it didn't fall apart. And it didn't evaporate. Because it wasn't a crutch. It was foundation. It was the rock on which Planck built life. And when everything around collapsed, the rock remained. Not because Planck was naive, because the rock was real. And now I want to expand the conversation, because Planck was not alone. And this is the part that completely destroys the myth that scientists don't believe in God. Werner Heisenberg, the creator of the uncertainty principle, Nobel Prize in physics, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics. And a man who said that the first sip from the cup of natural science makes one an atheist, but that at the bottom of the cup, God is waiting. Heisenberg was saying that atheism is a superficial reaction to science, that whoever goes deep enough finds not emptiness, but God. Arthur Eddington, the astrophysicist who confirmed Einstein's general relativity, one of the most important scientists of the 20th century, practicing Christian, devout Quaker, he said that the universe is more like a great thought than a great machine, and that the substance of the world is mental substance. Do you understand what Eddington is saying? Same thing as Planck, that reality, deep down, is not matter. It's mind. It's thought. It is something immaterial that expresses itself in the form of matter. Materialism reverses everything. It says that the mind is a product of matter. But the physicists who have investigated the matter most deeply say the opposite. And before Planck and his generation, the list is even longer. Newton wrote more about God than about physics. Kepler said he did astronomy to think God's thoughts. Faraday was a preacher. Maxwell inscribed Bible verses on laboratory instruments. Mendel was a monk. Pasteur was a practicing Catholic. Lemaitre, the priest who proposed the Big Bang. After Planck, the list goes on. Francis Collins, the man who deciphered the human genome, was an atheist and became a Christian following the evidence. John Polkinghorne, a Cambridge particle physicist, left his academic career to become an Anglican priest. William Phillips, Nobel laureate in physics, is a practicing Christian who speaks openly about his faith. The narrative that scientists do not believe in God is pure fiction. It's a lie that is repeated so often that people stop questioning it. But when you look at the facts, the names, the statements, the writings, the lie dissolves. The greatest scientists in history believed in God, and many of them believed not in spite of science, but because of it. And here I want to address the objection that always comes up. The objection is that these scientists lived in times when everyone believed in God, that it was cultural, that it was social pressure. If they lived today, they would be atheists. This objection does not hold water for several reasons. First, because Planck lived in the 20th century, not in the Middle Ages. He lived at a time when atheism was perfectly acceptable in academic circles. Many of his colleagues were atheists or agnostics. He was under no pressure to believe. I was under pressure not to believe it, given the academic environment at the time. Second, because these men were independent thinkers. Newton overturned 2,000 years of Aristotelian physics because the data demanded it. Planck destroyed classical physics because the evidence pointed in another direction. These were not men who followed the crowd. They were men who followed the evidence, and the evidence led them to God. Third, because there are very high-level scientists today who believe in God. Collins, Phillips, Polkinghorne. Thousands of others who work quietly in the world's best laboratories, publish in the best journals, win the biggest awards, and believe in God. Faith has not disappeared from science, still present. Less visible, perhaps, because modern culture pressures silence, but present. And I want to end with something that goes beyond history and argument, something that touches the part of you that arguments alone can't reach. Planck found something deep inside matter that materialism doesn't want you to know. He found that the matter is not the foundation, that behind the matter there is something more, something immaterial, something conscious, something smart, something he called mind and religious traditions call God. And when Planck lost almost everything, wife, children, house, manuscripts, this mind did not disappear. It did not turn out to be an illusion. It did not dissolve in pain. It remained. Like the foundation, it is unshakable, firm, real. And maybe you're in a place where you need to hear this. Maybe life is taking its toll. Maybe you missed something. Maybe you look to the future and don't see any meaning. Maybe someone told you that science has already proven that God does not exist, and that the pain you feel is just chemistry in a brain that is just matter, in a universe that is just an accident. But the father of quantum physics would disagree. He would tell you that the matter is not the end of the story, that behind it there is something, somebody, a mind that sustains every particle of your being, who knows every atom of your body. That keeps reality existing at every moment. And that, if it is conscious and intelligent, as Planck believed, it can also be personal. You might care. You can love. And Heisenberg would tell you that if you went to the bottom of the glass and only found empty, maybe you didn't go deep enough. Because deep down, God is waiting. And Eddington would tell you that the universe is a big thought, not a big machine, and that you, as part of that thought, are not a cog. It's meaning. And Collins would tell you that when he read the human genetic code, the 3 billion letters that make you who you are, he saw no accident, saw language, and he recognized the author. And all of them, each in their own way, in different fields, at different times, with different experiences, would tell you the same thing. Stop hearing that scientists don't believe in God, because it's a lie. Those who went deeper believed more. Those who saw more found more. Those who understood better recognized it more clearly. Science does not distance us from God. Science, when practiced honestly and deeply, leads to God. That's what Planck discovered. This is what Heisenberg confirmed. This is what the entire history of science testifies to. And that's what you can also discover if you have the courage to go to the bottom of the glass instead of staying on the surface. Because on the surface, it seems like science and God don't mix. But deep down in matter, deep down in equations, deep down in reality, God is waiting, always has been. And the greatest scientists in history are the ones who had the courage to go deep enough to find it. If there's something changed in the way you think about science and faith, leave a like. If it gave you courage, comment below. If someone comes to mind, share. Subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one.